You know, every family has their legendary stories. The stories they tell again and again and again. The kids get tired of hearing it, but the adults never stop finding them funny. And sometimes those stories are a little embellished, and sometimes they don't need any embellishment to be funny. My father-in-law used to love to tell the story of the day his second daughter, Jana, came home and said, "Dad, my car's making some weird noises, and I want to know if you think I should take it to the mechanic." And my father-in-law was not a car guy any more than I am, but he was an engineer. He was very intelligent, and so he figured, well, at least I'll take a look at it. If there's something obvious wrong, I can save some money. So they popped the hood, and he pulled the dipstick to check the oil, and it was bone dry. And he said, "Jana, when's the last time you put oil in this car?" And she said, and I quote, "You put oil in a car?" Now, in her defense, gas gets lots of publicity, right? There's a big gas gauge on your dashboard. You always know how much gas is in your tank. Every time you drive down the highway, you see billboards advertising gas stations and how much it costs per gallon. There's nothing like that for oil. And so in Jana's defense, I understand why she didn't know that oil went in a car. After all, if there's no gas in the tank, the car doesn't run. You can still start a car engine. You can still maybe run it for a little while without oil. But here's the thing, and again, I'm not a car guy, but here's what I understand is your engine is made of hundreds of metal parts, and they're all in motion when that car is started, when that car is running, and all that motion creates friction, and that friction creates heat, and that heat eventually will burn that engine up, and you'll be stuck with a very expensive, very large piece of junk. But oil lubricates those parts, and it stops that friction, and it stops that heat, and it enables the car to run, hopefully, God willing, for years into the future. Hopefully, God willing, for years past the point where you finish paying for it. Anybody ever get there before? That's a beautiful thing. Now, we're in a series about spiritual exercises that help us become like Jesus. That's our goal as Christians, as apprentices of Jesus, as disciples of the Lord. Our goal is to become like him. We'll never have his power, but we can have his character. That's our destiny if we walk beside him. But it doesn't happen just by coming to church on Sundays. It doesn't happen by just getting older. There are exercises you have to do. You have to train for righteousness. And there are spiritual exercises that Christians have been using for 2,000 years to become more like him. And we've talked about some of them so far in this series. We're talking about 10 of them that are found in the scriptures. We've talked so far about things like meditating on God's word and praying. We've talked about confessing our sins to one another. Last week we talked about generosity. But today we're going to talk about solitude, time alone with the Father. And this is a biblical spiritual exercise. It doesn't just make you more like Jesus over time. It's something you can't do without. It's like oil in your oil pan. Without it, you run dry. You burn up. You run to the end of your rope. And it's like oil in the sense that nobody's going to tell you that. It just doesn't come naturally to us. No one says to themselves, "What I need right now is more time alone with God." And yet you need it. You need it or you can't function anymore. Here's what David says about it in Psalm 62. "For God alone, my soul waits in silence. From him comes my salvation. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my fortress. I shall not be greatly shaken. How long will all of you attack a man to batter him like a leaning wall, a tottering fence? They only plan to thrust him down from his high position. They take pleasure in falsehood. They bless with their mouths, but inwardly they curse. For God alone, O my soul, wait in silence, for my hope is from him. He only is my rock and my salvation, my fortress. I shall not be shaken. On God rests my salvation and my glory, my mighty rock. My refuge is God. Trust in him at all times, O people. Pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. Those of low estate are but a breath. Those of high estate are a delusion. In the balances they go up. They are together lighter than a breath. Put no trust in extortion. Set no vain hopes on robbery. If riches increase, set not your heart on them. Once God has spoken, twice before I have heard this, that power belongs to God, and that to you, O Lord, belongs steadfast love. For you will render to a man according to his work. Like many of the Psalms, this is written by King David, and David was the most powerful of all Israel's kings. He stretched the land to its furthest extent. You know, David never lost a battle. In all the battles he fought, he won every single one. And yet, you and I look at that and you think, boy, it'd be good to be king, wouldn't it? It'd be good to be a monarch, even today, to have the fact that no one ever tells you what to do. You make all the decisions, that people bow and scrape before you, that you get the best of everything in your country, that you can set the direction, the tone for your entire nation, and everything devolves down to your decisions. A lot of us think that would be a good life, and yet there's a reason why there's a saying, heavy lies the head that wears the crown. If you've ever had a supervisor position at your work, or if you've ever raised young kids, if you know what it's like to have a group of people who are taking orders from you, you know that it sounds fun from the outside, and then you get there and you realize there's a lot of pressure there. The decisions are on you. The buck stops with you, and that's hard. Now, if you think that it's hard to run a small company or a small unit of a company, imagine running an entire kingdom. Imagine millions of people depending on you, waiting on you, leaning on you to make good decisions, hoping that you choose correctly. David had that pressure. Not only that, as this psalm and many others show, David felt the paranoia, although it's not paranoia if it's true, that people within his own kingdom were plotting against him. As he says here, they bless with their mouths, but inwardly they curse. They're trying to knock me down like a tottering wall. David faced pressure every single day, and yet when you read Psalm 62, when you read so many of his words, in spite of all that friction and that friction that produces heat and all that was going on in his life, David was thriving. He was winning. He was not only leading his kingdom well, he also made time to write psalms like this one, psalms that people have worshiped to for 3,000 years and counting. How could he do it? Because my soul waits in silence for God alone. He says it twice in this psalm. For God alone, oh my soul. He's giving his soul commands. Oh my soul, wait in silence for my hope is from him. Now, what do I mean when I say solitude? I know in prison movies like Shawshank Redemption, to be put in solitary confinement is the ultimate punishment, right? Why would we do that to ourselves? Let me define solitude for you. The spiritual discipline of solitude means regular, quiet, focused, unhurried time with God. And all four of those adjectives matter. So let me walk through them real quickly. When I say regular time alone with God, I mean, don't wait until you feel like your oil pan is empty. Don't wait until your dipstick is dry, right? Make time for the Lord. I think every single day, even if it's only 10 minutes, time alone with the Father, you need it regularly. Quiet. David says, wait in silence. Yes, there are times when we come and we pour out our prayers to the Lord and our hearts to him and the things that are on our minds. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the times maybe before that, maybe after it, maybe a totally separate moment where you're just sitting with the Father just to be in his presence in quiet time with the Lord. And then focused. This is not something you can multitask. Guys, let's face it, none of us men can really multitask. I mean, women seem to be able to do it. We can't. I don't know why. But this is not something you can do while you're watching the ball game on TV. This is not something you can do while you're doom scrolling social media. This is not something you can do while you're engaged in your favorite hobby. This is something that requires focus and all your attention on him. And then unhurried. This is the hard part because we live these lives that are so rigorously scheduled. Even the retired people I know, they have a schedule that they're keeping. Appointment to appointment, moment to moment. And yet the best time you can spend with the Lord is time when you can say, okay, God, I'm yours. Whatever you want to say to me, I'm here. And I will wait upon you until you speak. Now immediately, I'm sure some of you are thinking, wait, that sounds awkward. That doesn't sound like something I'm wired for. Or Jeff, you don't understand. I'm at this stage in my life, there's no such thing as unhurried time for anything. And still others are probably saying, why would I even do this? What is the benefit of just getting in a quiet place with nothing but me and a God I can't see or hear? Well, let me give you 3 reasons why you need solitude. Time alone with God. Number 1, because nothing else will do. Just like the choir just sang, nothing else, Lord, will do. In a car, there are lots of liquids you could put in that oil pan, and lots of them are viscous. They seem like they would lubricate those parts, right? But if you put bacon grease in your oil pan, it won't work. If you put olive oil in your oil pan, it won't work. Only olive oil will work, and only a particular kind. You have to look at your manual and say, okay, it takes this kind of oil. It's very specific. Don't try anything else. In the same way, only God will do. Only time alone with God will do. There are lots of things we do with our spare time. Because face it, we all have the same 24 hours in a day, don't we? And you're not always working or sleeping. There are times when you have moments to yourself. And I don't know, for you it may be minutes. For others it may be hours. But what do you do with that time? What do you do when you feel like, boy, I'm really worn out? I need to be refreshed. Some of you nap. Some of you turn on TV and you watch a game, or you get involved in a series or a movie. Some of you are involved in hobbies. You hit the golf course, or you hit the lake, or you hit the antique shops, or whatever your wood shop, or whatever your hobby is. Or maybe you spend time with other people. All of those are good things, by the way. I'm not denigrating any of that. But none of those replace time alone with the Lord. None of those will fill that spot in your heart that only He fits. Our hearts are restless until they find their rest in you, St. Augustine said. C.H. Spurgeon, the greatest Baptist preacher of all time, called Psalm 62 the only psalm, because the word only or alone is found 6 times in the psalm. Only you, Lord, will do. For God alone, my soul waits in silence. Only God will do. And it's hard for you to believe this, some of you, that right now what you need most of all is probably not a vacation. Vacations are good. I plan to take one in a couple of weeks, Lord willing. And I highly recommend it if you can do it. But a vacation doesn't replace time alone with the Father. David even mentions 2 alternatives to solitude. He talks about people. He says, listen, highborn people are a delusion and lowborn people are a breath. They both just vanish. People are good. They're made in God's image. We're meant to relate to men and women who God brings into our lives, but they're human. They fail us. God does not. He mentions money. He says, extortion can get you in trouble, and stealing from others is wrong. And even if you get rich legitimately, it goes away in the end. So don't put your trust in that either. Time alone with the Father is the only thing that will do. What are you giving your time to? What are you making time for? Here's the thing. You may say, I am booked 24/7, Jeff, and I believe you. But you've got the same 24 hours as everybody else. And you can make decisions that say, I'm going to do less of this so I can have more of what my heart needs. You can make that decision today, and I highly recommend you do. So number 2, why do we need solitude? Because it's how we hear God's voice. This is how we hear God speak. One of my favorite characters, probably top 5 for me in the entire Bible, is Elijah. And you're going to hear about Elijah in a few weeks in my next series in midsummer. But Elijah is one of my favorites because he's so many things that I wish I was. He's bold, he's fearless, he's powerful. I mean, here's a guy who called down fire from heaven on the people who came to arrest him. I don't really want to do that, not very often at least, but I have to respect somebody who was willing to stand alone against a pagan king and queen, who was willing to stand alone against 450 prophets of the false god Baal and win. And yet there's this moment that I love in the story of Elijah because it's a reminder that he's human and we're all human. A moment when Elijah just totally loses his nerve. And he goes and he sits down under a tree and he says, God, just kill me. You ever felt that way? I just want to sit under a tree and wait till God takes my life because I've got nothing. I've got nothing, no answers. I've got nothing to offer. And God comes to him, and here's what I love. God doesn't give him the whole, it's okay, pumpkin, it's all right. He says, here's some bread, here's some water, eat and drink because you've got some walking to do. And he marches him south for hundreds of miles in the desert alone, all the way to Mount Sinai, the mountain of God, where Moses met with God hundreds of years before. And there, in a spot hundreds of miles from any other human, God speaks to Elijah and he says, okay, number one, you're not the only one. There's 7,000 more who still believe in me. And number two, I'm not done with you yet. I will let you know when I'm done, but I've still got work for you to do. God took Elijah out in the middle of nowhere to speak to him. Sometimes that's what we need, too, to get away from everything so we can hear his voice. When I was a little kid, my favorite aunt was my Aunt Retta at that time, because Retta at that time didn't have kids. She hadn't had children yet, and so she was able to just, and quite willing to shower my brother and me with gifts, because she had no little kids to spoil. And so Retta bought us things that my parents never would. And I remember one year, just out of nowhere, she gave us a set of walkie-talkies. And so my brother and I, we lived in the country, and so we had all this room to explore, and we'd go to various parts of our property, and we'd talk to each other on the walkie-talkies. And what you learn when you use walkie-talkies is you press the button to talk, but if you want to hear back, you got to let go of the button, don't you? And there's a whole lot of us that have our thumb on that button constantly. And we don't even know it. I remember as a younger Christian desperately wanting to hear God's voice. And I'd hear preachers talk about, the Lord showed me this, or God spoke to me and said this. And I'd think, boy, I wish I had that kind of communication with the Lord, because then I'd always make the right decisions, and I'd always do the right thing, and my life would go well. And so I wondered why God wouldn't speak to me. And then I realized it's because I had my thumb on that button. I came to God with my agenda. I spoke my requests to the Lord, as we're commanded to do, but I never listened. I never made time to just sit in his presence with my thumb off that button, waiting for him to speak. And there are two things I've learned since then about hearing God's voice. You ready for this? Two things I've learned. Number one, you have to adjust to his schedule. You don't ask him to adjust to yours. See, this is not the way we relate to humans, at least not most humans. Your wife, your husband, your friend, your roommate, whoever, your parents, you say, okay, I got my phone on me. You can reach out whenever you need. I'll be running errands. I'll be doing my job. I'll be doing I've got things to do, but you speak whenever you're ready, and I'll listen. No, that's not the way we relate to God. We don't say, God, you come find me when you want to talk. We go to him and we wait on him. The word wait on the Lord, the command wait on the Lord, is actually found in the scriptures over 100 times. That means something, y'all. Wait on the Lord over and over again means you adjust to his schedule. And that's easy for us to understand when you think about it this way. If there was a famous person who you greatly admired, athlete, movie star, musician, politician, business leader, if that person contacted you out of the blue and you're like, good grief, I didn't know this guy knew my name, and said, I want to spend some time with you today. Do you have any time for me today? I guarantee you'd clear your whole schedule. I don't care what you had scheduled that day. It might be your mom's birthday. I know this is Mother's Day, but you'd be like, hey, Mom, can we get together tomorrow? Because so-and-so is going to get together with me. And she'd be like, yeah, you kidding me? Absolutely. If we do that for some famous human, how much more should we do that for the Lord? Should we clear time in our schedule and say, this is my time with him, and nothing else gets in the way of that? The second thing we know is, the second thing I know about hearing God's voice is that most of the time, when God speaks, it's not what's on top of your priority list. We come to God expecting answers. And this is the thing that took me so long to wrap my mind around. The book Experiencing God by Henry Blackaby helped me understand this. That most of the time when God speaks, it's not to give us answers to the questions we have. We want God to operate like a fortune teller or a magic 8-ball. We want to come to God and say, okay, should I ask Susie out? Yes, no, maybe, right? We want answers. And God, most of the time when he speaks to us, it's not about what we come to him asking. It's about something completely different. Now, there have been times, yes, when God spoke and gave me an answer to a question, a specific decision I was making. I certainly prayed and felt certain that God was bringing me here 10 years ago. But most of the time before and since that God has spoken to me, it's simply been, as I've studied his word, something stood out to me and I said, I've never thought about that before. That's something about God I've never realized. Or maybe something that I knew years ago and have forgotten and haven't been living out. And you might say, well, that's frustrating. I want answers. I want God to guide me. And here's the good news. He's giving you what you need. Because the more you know God, the better you know God, the more wisdom you gain. And the more wisdom you gain, the more those decisions that are keeping you up at night become much more simple. Because that's wisdom. Wisdom is knowing the right path. And it comes from knowing him. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Proverbs 1:7. That's how you learn to make good decisions, by knowing him better. And it's in that quiet time with the Father in solitude that we hear his voice. There's a third reason we need this. It's what Jesus did. Many, many times in the scriptures, as I'm about to show you, Jesus went off into what the Bible calls a deserted place. The word for a deserted place in Greek is eremos. Can we have that slide? A deserted place is eremos. Thank you. Thank you, Bill. All right, eremos. Can y'all say that with me? Eremos. There you go. See, you know Greek. Before Jesus started his ministry, before he ever preached a sermon or worked a miracle, he went out into the eremos, into the desert outside the Dead Sea for 40 days and nights. The night before he called his 12 disciples, he went off by himself, spent the entire night in his eremos with the Father. When he heard that John the Baptist had been executed, in his grief, he said to his disciples, let's get away to an eremos. Let's get away from these people so we can grieve. After he fed the 5,000 with 5 loaves and 2 fishes, and the people wanted to make him king of Israel, wanted to start a revolution right there, he sent the disciples across the Sea of Galilee, and he went up on the mountaintop to be alone with the Father. Once, after staying up all night, healing people left and right, the sun dawned and Jesus went off into an eremos and spent time alone with the Father. And Peter tracked him down and said, what are you doing out here in the middle of nowhere? Everybody's looking for you. And Jesus said, yeah, but I need this. Yes, I love people. Yes, I want to heal. I want to help anybody I meet, but I can't do without this time alone with my Father. And neither can you, and neither can I. Had this interesting experience. 3 years ago, this church was generous enough to give me a sabbatical. That meant that for 6 weeks, I'd been here 7 years. For 6 weeks, I had no responsibilities at the church at all. And I could just refresh my soul and get ready for the coming 7 years. And the first thing I did on that sabbatical, the very first thing I did was I drove out to a house in the hill country it's owned by some members of this church, and they gave me permission. I didn't just knock out a window and climb in. But I spent 5 days there alone, just me and God. And I just read scripture and I prayed, and I'd made a playlist of worship songs, and I worshiped along with those when I'd go for walks or when I'd go out jogging. I read books about prayer because one of my goals was to grow in my prayer life. But it was just me and the Father for 5 days. And at the end of those 5 days, I came home. And the next day was Sunday, and it was my first Sunday out of the pulpit. So we decided to go to church at a church in this area, and it happened to be a black church. And if you've ever been to black church, you know they're not afraid to show emotion. They're not afraid to declare what they really believe, how they really feel about the Lord. And I got to tell you, I hope this doesn't sound weird. If it does, too bad. But as they launched into the first song, the very first song right out of the gate, and immediately this wave of joy came over me. Fortunately, it was a song I knew, and so I could sing along, but I just felt this wave of joy like nothing I'd ever felt. Y'all, here's the thing. I root for a Houston sports team, so I'm used to losing. Here I am in my Astros colors, as if that'll help them. But you know, those times when we have won championships, that's exciting, that's wonderful, but then, you know, you beat Duke in the national semifinals. Yeah, let's watch that again on YouTube. But then what are you left with, right? That's joy, that's excitement. But this was nothing like that. This was a joy let me put it this way. I'm sitting there singing that song, and I feel these tears rolling down my cheeks. I'm like, what's going on? Because I've always heard about weeping tears of joy, but I've only actually experienced it 3 times. And 2 of those were when my kids were born, and the 3rd was that day. And why did that affect me? I think it's because I'd been 5 days straight with just me and the Father, with my thumb off the button, just listening to him, just in his presence, nothing interrupting or distracting. And I had just imbibed his goodness. And now I'm in the presence of hundreds of people who are just joyfully singing about how good he is. And it just made my heart glad. And I'm just telling you that everybody I know, every person I know is chasing that feeling that I felt that morning. And some of them are chasing it through their hobbies, and some of them are chasing it through money, and some of them are chasing it through sex, and some of them are chasing it through popularity and approval and all manner of other things. And none of that will do, but I've found what'll give it to you. And you might say, well, I don't have 5 days to spend alone with the Father. And the truth is, I don't either. I probably won't again until, Lord willing, I get my next sabbatical in 4 years. But we have time every day that we can give to him, even if it's just a few minutes. So that's my challenge for you today. My challenge to you is find your eremos, find your deserted place. And I mean, plan it out, include every detail. Like, here's what time, here's where I'm going to be, here's what I'm going to do to make sure nobody interrupts or distracts me. Here's how I'm going to spend that time to maximize it, to make sure that my heart is totally open to him. And I'll tell you, it might be awkward at first. You might sit down with the Father and your mind might race and run to other things. That's okay. Pray about them. Whatever your mind is racing toward, give them to him. My point is, make your eremos this week if you don't already have one. I'll tell you mine. For me, first thing in the morning, after I brush my teeth, I go into the study. We have a little study in our house, close the doors, and I just open my Bible and I read. And I meditate on God's word, and I hear from him, and I pray for my family. And that's how I start my day. And I need that time. Now, maybe that's not the way it'll work for you. You might try that, and it's not working for you. Maybe it'll be better for you to go out for a walk first thing in the morning, for you to talk to the Lord while you're walking. Maybe for you, it'll be about at lunch in your office. You lock the door to your office, and you put your phone in a drawer. And that's the other thing, by the way. I don't look at my phone before I go into the study. I don't look at my phone. So if you text me overnight, I'm not seeing it until after my time with the Lord. I hope you're okay with that. If you're not, too bad. But yeah, maybe for you, it's time at lunch break in your office. Maybe for you, the best you can give at this stage in life is you're going to commute every day to work with no sound in your car. It's just you and the Lord alone, and you're singing, and you're praising, and you're praying, and you're hearing from him. And I get it. If you've got young kids right now, if you've got little kids and you're the stay-at-home parent, unhurried time is just not heard of. So you just have to be strategic, and you just have to say, okay, when she's at preschool, or when he's napping, or when they're sitting in front of the TV watching Bluey, I'll open my phone app on my phone and I'll read God's word, maybe a chapter, and I'll spend that time with him. I just need something. I need that time alone with the Lord. So make your eremos this week. There's another time I didn't tell you about that Jesus got away from people, and that was in his final hours. He took his 3 closest friends with him, took them to a place where they had met many times before. He sat them down and he said, y'all pray for me. I'm in trouble. I need your help. And then he walked further till he was all by himself. And he threw himself on the ground and he began to pray. And he was under so much pressure that something almost unheard of happened to him. The capillaries under his skin burst, and blood began to mingle with the sweat that was pouring down his face. And why was he so worried? Why was he so pressured? Because in just a few minutes, he would be arrested. In just a few hours, he'd be on trial. By the time the sun rose, he would be nailed to a cross. And it wasn't the physical agony that he was worried about. It was the fact that he was taking upon himself the sins of every human being who had ever lived and ever would live, including yours, including mine. And he knew that he would face the righteous wrath that we should have faced. He would die the death that we should have died. He would face the very powers of hell itself, and he would win, but only through his death. And he did that. He did that for you. He did that for me. And so when he says, come spend time with me, he has the right to ask that. And not only does he have the right, but if he's the most powerful being in the universe, and he is, and if he loves you that much, and he does, why wouldn't you want to give him that time? I just want to say it one more time. If you're right now casting about in life and saying, I don't know what I need, maybe I need some new friends, maybe I need to go buy some new outfits, maybe I need to live in a different place, maybe I need a better job, maybe I need a vacation. I tell you what you need. You need time alone with the Father. Nothing else will do. Why not say to your soul, for God alone, O my soul, wait in silence, for my hope is from him.